So this is me. I used to live in a cubicle. Okay. So that's me living in that cubicle. Okay. And my monitors. Look at that was my makeshift standing desk, Ben. Look at that. Bananas, right? Dude, this is where I lived. This is in the back corner of the office. I worked for the most corporate company ever called Ryan, named after the CEO, Brent Ryan, not into himself at all. Okay. And I used to stand right there in my standing desk. That was cool. And I used to just live inside of Excel. And I used to argue with assessors over the phone right there. That's the phone I used to argue with them. Hated it. It's my first job out of college. And I just needed a job, basically. My parents were like, better find a job. And they hired me, so I went there. Okay. I ended up staying there way too long, 4 years. And basically, my role was I was property tax consultant. So what does that mean? Right? I pretty much strictly handled commercial real estate property as well as multifamily residential property. And my role was to work with property owners, building managers, and ideally lower their property taxes. For those of you that know this, commercial real estate here in Colorado is assessed much, much higher than residential property. So those property taxes are much, much higher, right? So they're paying, on average 6 figures in property taxes. So essentially, I would come in, right? My company would essentially save a portion of those tax savings and get that essentially as our commission split. And that's how we got paid. Okay. So those are all the states I worked everything from apartments to office to industrial retail, kind of everything. Luxury residential, we really only worked residential really when it was like someone who had like a $20 million home in Aspen or something like that. And we would appeal those as well for them and try to reduce those down. Okay. So that's kind of how that worked. But we're not focusing strictly on commercial. That's a whole nother animal. Fortunately for you all, residential is much more straightforward. Okay. And fortunately for you all, you have access to, right? PPMLS, MLS, RE Colorado, pick one, which unfortunately the everyday consumer does not, right? And that's where you have such a huge advantage to help all of these people. Because truthfully, like the story goes, is that El Paso County, Denver County, pick any county, they have to review a lot of properties. They have to value a lot of properties. Most of the properties are automatically valued through some sort of valuation system. And the truth is they're not going to get it all correct, okay? And what that means for you is there's opportunities. Now, again, I'm not saying they get everything wrong because there also are situations where they get everything correct or it's too low. For example, right, I teach this class. When my value came out, surprisingly, I was probably part of the 0.01% of people. My value barely went up. So guess what? I did not appeal that property value. Just keeping that one quiet, underneath the radar, okay? So there are circumstances where people might have values that are too low. And what that means for you is don't just file an appeal to file an appeal, okay? Because truthfully, the county, technically, they can raise the value. I've only seen them do it once. They threatened to, unless we removed an appeal for a very, very aggressive property owner. Otherwise, they could have because it just didn't make sense. So just keep that in mind as well. This is really a class to teach you how does this work? Why does it work? Why do we pay taxes, right? Politics aside, all that stuff. And then if you want to file an appeal, this is how you do it, A. And then B, right, there's a little bit of I'm going to share with you kind of what you kind of need to know what goes on behind the scenes, right, when you file that appeal. So by a show of hands, who here has appealed or helped appeal a property somewhere? Colorado, yes? Yes, hands up, solid chunk of us. How did that go? Anyone want to share? Good. Reduced? Reduced? Wow. El Paso County? Somewhere else? Okay. Ohio. Cool. I'm so glad to hear that because it varies from county to county, right? And truthfully, what this all comes down to is when you file appeals, property taxes, and really it all comes down to is, does that appeal land on a certain type of person's desk who is a very by-the-book rule follower, or are they more lenient on looking at certain things, and how does that work? It just comes down to personality styles and luck, and that's just the truth. In my day, when I had to work with assessors, some, right, personality style, they're more kind of go with the flow and can make things work, and some are, this is my number, and, we're going to hold you to it, right? So there's also that aspect to it. I have found certain counties are easier. I think El Paso County is one of them, versus, say, Denver County. A lot of people just get a rubber stamp, okay? And that's what we call it. For us as a tax consultant who's submitting thousands of appeals all the time, they automatically know that when we submit all these appeals in, they don't even have time to look at them. They just put a rubber stamp on it. They just deny it until we go up level to level. Technically, there's 3 levels that you can go up to. We'll get into this in a little bit. But we'll kind of get into how all this works. But just know that today I want to share with you kind of some secrets on what I think works and what doesn't work. Okay, we're going to skip that till later. Class goals, right? Let's understand the basics. Let's learn a little bit. Learn how to file an appeal. If you have a question, just yell at me. We'll answer it. And we'll just kind of roll through this here. Let's go. Okay, so understanding Colorado property value assessments, right? So today we're focusing specifically on residential. So residential properties, the way that we compare and value properties are strictly based off of the sales comparison approach, also known as the market approach, right? So we're going to look at comparable properties that sold within a certain time frame that are comparable if possible and try to come up with a value, right? Some of us probably should know how to do this from creating CMAs and all that and looking at data. The assessment process takes place every 2 years. Right? So what is it? It's April 8th, 2025. We're coming up here from that 2-year mark. New assessed values are official on May 1st. They'll get mailed out. Depending on the county, eventually they come online. Some counties take longer than others to do all of that. All right? The assessed value is used to determine, guess what? The property taxes. Okay. So what's the role of the county assessor? Again, like let's not, let's be in their corner as well here, right? Their role is property valuation. They're going to be responsible for valuing every type of property, commercial, residential. Again, getting back to my point, that is a massive job to undertake, right? When you only have so many people on staff to do this job. That's why so many of them rely on algorithms and data to automatically do this for them, which doesn't always get it right. Okay, maintaining property records, right? Colorado is a great state that we live in because we have access to so much real estate data online. Some states, we don't have access to that data. Like for example, Nebraska, a lot of data in there is more closed off. You can't get it until you file the appeal, okay? So it's pretty darn cool that we're in the state of Colorado and we have access to all of this information at our fingertips, all right? That's important. Processing exemptions and appeals, okay? So again, we'll talk about this at the very end of the presentation, but certain people apply for exemptions, okay? They qualify. And I want to share this with you because you might know someone who might actually qualify for an exemption. They might not be getting it. So we'll cover that at the end of this presentation. And of course, what we're here for, right, is appeals. And they'll be dealing with that for quite some time here. Providing information. That's it. So moving on, their role is that, and we're going to try to work with them. I think that's the best approach too. If we do file an appeal, is we want to try to be as helpful as possible. We want to follow these rules to the best that we can so that if they do receive our appeal and have time to look at it, they aren't just going to say, this person doesn't even know what they're doing and just give it a denial. Okay, so all that's important. So moving on, understanding Colorado property value assessments. To determine the assessed value, the county assessor will look at different factors in properties, right? You guys know this: location, size, age, neighborhood, conditions, recent sales of similar properties. Key point here, though, is condition, right? Truthfully, they don't know condition. They're not going inside of people's homes. They don't know if there's some sort of outlying factor that's affecting it that might, have it deserve a lower valuation. So there are going to be exceptions here. They only know as much as they know. They also may consider any improvements or renovations made to the property since the last assessment. If a property owner disagrees, right, we will file an appeal and we'll walk through that process here in a little bit. So it's important to note that the assessed value is not necessarily the same as the market value. I think, unfortunately, they make it more convoluted than it needs to be. So we'll walk through an equation on what this looks like and how it's broken down. Okay. The assessed value, though, on the other hand, is used for tax purposes. So as much as the assessed value is the assessed value, we're never going to rely on that as market value because you'll find here in a few slides, the assessed value is based off of a certain snapshot in time based off of a specific date, which is past and no longer present. So it's not market value. Okay. Understanding Colorado property value assessments, moving on here. Real property is reevaluated again every 2 years, and it's reevaluated every odd numbered year. So guess what? We're here in 2025. It's time for the reassessment. So for example, 2025 values will be mailed out on May 1st, or they might be available depending on the county online starting May 1st. It just varies from county to county. Even numbered years, right? So what happens in those other years? Even numbered years, typically they stay the same. They only change for properties that experience new construction, demolition, right? Changes in rezoning. Again, I see a lot of this on the commercial side, right? You got vacant land, then all of a sudden there's development that take place. Usually the county comes out at the end of the year, they're going to reassess it in that even numbered year based off of what has been improved on the property. Zoning changes other things, like we've seen that before with the agricultural land, right? Agricultural land is assessed very, very low, right? But then once they start changing that zoning or building on it, everything changes, it all shifts. Mostly for us residential, typically it's just going to stay the same. So that's easy to know. Moving on here. Tax years 2024 and 2025. Comparable properties, if we're going to file appeal for the 2025 value that is about to be released here in less than a month, we are going to look at properties that sold between this date range. Okay? Let's just write it up here. January 1st, 2023 to June 30th, and we're going to get a little different here because I'm going to run out of space, 2024, okay? With the emphasis on June 30th, 2024, okay? Let's just focus on that, okay? Whoops. I just jumped around somewhere. Here we go. Okay, so what do you need to know about this? Did a lot of properties sell in this time frame? Is that a fair assumption for most properties? Again, we could be subjective, right? Okay. When an assessor is going to look at any specific property, in a perfect world, if they could only look at one date and time, for at least for 2025, they're going to look at anything that sold, ideally, on June 30th of 2024. Okay? In a perfect world, everything sold on June 30th, 2024. That's what they're basing their time on. This is called the date of value. This is what the 2025 value is based on. Okay? If they can't find properties that sold on June 30th, 2024, they will slowly start to go back in time, right? Typically, because that's not realistic, they usually go back, right, and look at the past 18 months, which brings us back to January 1st, 2023. That's how we look at that date of value, okay? Now, here's what happens, okay? The more sophisticated counties or the really more detail-oriented assessors, okay, right? There's a lot of them. It's a good role for them. They will do something called time trending. So they might find a perfect comp that sold January 1st of 2023, but guess what they'll say? They'll say, hey, this still isn't accurate because we need to time trend it forward based off of what happened in the real estate market up until June 30th, 2024. So I don't know. You guys tell me. You're the experts. Where did the real estate market go? Did it go? Between January 1st to June 30th, 2024, still increased. So they might apply some sort of percentage upward trend each month until it weights it forward to June 30th, 2024. Does that make sense? Okay.
Not by a lot, though.
Not by a lot. Not by a lot. And they have some crazy algorithm on how they've created this, and they'll tell you all about it, some of them, and how you can't dispute it, blah, 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 blah. So just be mindful of that. If you're looking at comps and values, if something doesn't look right, they might have time trended forward everything, okay? All right, cool, moving on. Very important point, okay? So again, bringing this back to you, if you want to file an appeal, right, ideally you're going to find the newer comps that sold closer to this time. If in a worst case scenario situation, you got a really unique property, I found this to happen from time to time with multifamily apartments. I appealed all of the apartments all over Colorado. And some of them are more unique than others, or they're in a unique location. Sometimes I would have to get creative and go back in 6-month increments past that January 1st, which you can do up to 5 years, right? But for most of us, usually that doesn't have to be a situation. So, 2025, okay? Assessor will review comparable sales, use this data to determine, in theory, right, 2025, 2026. Gonna stay the same. Okay, so I don't have stats here. These are old data stats, right? But we all know that it was pretty bananas the last time the value was released in 2023. And a lot of people got pissed off. Does anybody know what El Paso County, what was like the average increase in gas numbers? Was it high? It was probably high. I mean, it was wild. It was like, I've seen 40, 50% in counties in Denver Metro. It was wild. Because, right, that time frame for the last assessment was from January 1st of 2021 to June 30th of 2022. If you remember June 30th of 2022, it's wild. That was the peak. That was the peak. That was the worst time to have a date of value for property taxes. If you're paying property taxes. If you're the county, it's good for you. Okay. So, cool. That's an important point because that's literally how you find all of your comps. Okay. So let's move on here again, right? It went crazy. I'll update these slides once we have the values. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I have a strong feeling that they're going to go up. The question is by how much of a percentage, right? Why do we pay property taxes? That's always an important concept to understand too, right? It's for local governments in Colorado to raise revenue, to fund various public services and infrastructure projects such as schools, roads, local parks, local transportation, right? Water infrastructure, mental health services, and public safety services. So they do go to a good cost. So that feels good when we hopefully maybe pay that money that we don't have a choice to pay anyway, right? All of the revenue generated by property taxes stays within the county. So that's nice to know, right? We're here in El Paso. It's going to stay in El Paso. It's going to support us. And they do not fund any state services. It's strictly for within that specific county. Property taxes are levied on the value of the property, which includes land, buildings, and improvements. For us in residential, right, we're strictly going to, if it's built and it's done, right, we're going to look at that property that's building on top of it and look at those comps, okay? Oh, go back. Don't look at that. Okay. Nobody saw that. So, wrong answers only. Which state has the highest property tax rate?
New York.
Good guess. New York. Texas. Good guess.
California.
California, Texas, Wyoming, Hawaii, New Jersey. Boom, New Jersey. Which state has the lowest property tax rate? Good guess. It's close. Ohio. Okay. Montana. Colorado's up there. So guys, this fluctuates obviously, right? This is a few years old here, but these top 5 usually are within that same range. Look at that, Hawaii tax rate 0.28% compared to New Jersey, 2.49% average property tax rate. Okay, where's Colorado on there? We're usually within that top 5 for the lowest property taxes. So as much as we want to be upset about it, we're usually among the top 5 lowest in the nation, right? Wyoming's usually up there too. I don't see them up there.
The same case for commercial, or is that just residential?
This is just residential. This is just residential. Yep. So it makes you feel any better, okay? Something to think about. Texas, 45, close. Yeah, I got a buddy. Yeah, it's wild how high its property taxes are.
In Texas?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the advantage Texas has is no state income tax.
Mm-hmm.
Property taxes.
True. Pros and cons.
That's in Florida too.
Florida too. What's also fascinating from like a property tax consultant appeal thing, right? The rules are different in every state, right? Like how we value property, commercial, residential, like it can vary from state to state, and also how the game is played varies. Like for example, in Texas, like it's a well-known thing. Like we had a division that literally just worked Texas in different parts of Texas because they were so aggressive, and it was the whole game. Like all the commercial properties would get raised so high because they knew we're going to file appeals, and they just used it as a negotiation tactic to then bring it back to what they wanted. And it was like a whole thing. It's wild because everyone just appeals things in Texas. So anyway, here we are. Okay, so Colorado, let's go. Top 3 according to this slide. Makes me feel a little bit better. Cool. Property tax calculations, right? Let's do a little bit of math. Okay. Rebecca's going to come up here in a minute and actually do this live and run through the calculation. The lender. Let's go. Right? Exactly. That's right. TI 83 plus. So the tax calculation is based off of, right, the classification of the property. Is it land, ag land? Is it commercial? Is it residential? What is it, right? Then the actual value. Important note, actual value. Then, right, that's going to take you with the assessment rate to get you down to the assessed value with applying the mill levy. I'll show you the calculation here if you want to learn it. This is how we calculate property taxes for real estate in the state of Colorado. We take the actual value, we multiply it by the assessment ratio, we multiply it by the mill levy, mill standing for 1,000, divided by 1,000. That's how we get to our property taxes, okay? Or if you don't want to do this, you can probably just ask ChatGPT at this point. I didn't think about that. Just ask AI to do it for you, right? Or it will be listed typically on all county websites, right? Treasurer, assessor, depending on the county. But how does this work? We'll show you here in a slide. Okay, important. Let's break down what each of these components are. Assessment rates are set statewide and vary between different types of properties, right? Res, commercial, multifamily. Multifamily is super lucky because it's assessed pretty darn close to that residential rate. So if you're a multifamily investor, right, or developer, your property taxes in Colorado would be significantly lower compared to if you were to invest in other types of commercial real estate, right? See you, dude, later. Mill levies are set by the local government. Everyone say, bye, Ben.
Good luck. Don't make anybody fall asleep, please.
I know, we'll try. We're cruising through this. I got 20 minutes left. Mill levies are set by local governments, okay? So think city, county, fire, police districts, water districts, special districts. They help cover the revenue needed for local governments to maintain and expand these local services. Remember, again, local governments are the entities that benefit from the revenue from property taxes. So again, it's supposed to benefit us locally. A couple of things, I'm going to kind of breeze through these, but there are a couple of property tax legislature changes in the past few years. For the longest time, it was pretty straightforward. The assessment ratios for residential and commercial were really just two things at the time. Residential and multifamily were 7.96%. Commercial was 29%. Fortunately, they had to confuse it and make it more confusing. It's time. We're here. It's 2:40 p.m. It's time to check in for your flight. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. Gallagher Amendment. I'm not going to make you all sleep in this room, but it's something that happened. And it was repealed in 2020. It affected the ratio of property taxes, and it changed a few things, and we'll tell you here in a moment. Some other stuff that affected the assessment ratio. Okay, moving on here. And again, some other things that happened that reduced property taxes. You get it. All we need to know is this, right? The last assessment ratio that we used to calculate property taxes was that percentage. Now here in 2025, we are at 7.15%. So moving forward for 2025, it is slightly higher at 7.15%. Okay, let's look at some math. Okay, so if I take, let's just go back in time to 2023. Again, it's the same structure. Say you got a home valued with an actual value of $750,000. What you're going to do is you're going to take that $750,000, you're going to multiply it by the assessment rate, right? So for 2023, it was 6.95. For 2025, it'd be 7.15%. That number is going to give you your assessed value. Okay, they just call it assessed value, which is confusing because a lot of us just use the word assessed value. Technically, your value that comes out, they call it your actual value. Then you multiply it by your assessment rate to get your assessed value. Very confusing. Then they take this number, they multiply it by your mill levy divided by 1,000 to get your property taxes. Okay, wow, there's a lot of words on this slide. Fantastic. Basically what this is mill levies vary in the county. They can even vary, they don't just vary county to county, but even within the county, the mill levy can vary depending on where you live. Okay, what's that? So the mill levy is actually voted on. We actually can vote on the mill levy increasing, decreasing. We're going to talk about metro districts. Anyone live in a metro district? Anyone work with metro district? Anyone have a bad experience with metro district? Talk about that. Bad experience in metro district? We're going to talk about those because metro districts, for all of you, very, very important for you to understand, right? If you're helping someone buy a home with a metro district, it's going to significantly increase their property taxes. So mill levies are important to pay attention. I'm going to share with you an example on how they can affect property taxes. Okay, but they can change from year to year, and they're usually voted on within that area. The other thing I want to share with you too on this slide, mill levies can vary, right? As low as, go figure, right? Pickens County, Aspen at 1.43 mills up to, I've seen it as high as over 300 mill levy. Okay, it's nuts. So that will greatly affect your property taxes. Let's give you an example of how it affects your property taxes. So here's a $1 million home in Cherry Creek, Denver County. Okay, $1 million home with a mill levy at just about 80. Okay, you did the math on that. Total taxes about $5,200. Okay, $1 million home, mill levy at 80. Compared to $430,000 home with a mill levy at 187. Same taxes, actually higher. 5,600 versus 5,300. Mill levy at 80, mill levy at 187. $430,000 property. Okay, what's driving this mill levy up? You can go onto the assessor website. Usually you'll receive this in the mail if you're a property owner. They're going to break down what is paid out in that mill levy. What typically drives mill levies up significantly is a metro district. It's time to check in. You flying Southwest? 24 hours. Let's go. Means I got 17 minutes. Okay. What's a metro district? Let's go. Special district created to provide specific services to a defined geographic area such as water, sewage, drainage, parks, rec facilities, among other things. These districts are authorized by the state law and are typically governed by elected board of directors, okay? So why do these exist? Let's find out. It exists for developers, right? Let's take a new part of area. Let's take an undeveloped area. Let's build it out. Let's finance it. Let's finance the infrastructure, right? The amenities, all for this new development for residential or commercial properties. So how it works is the district will issue these bonds to pay for the construction for the infrastructure, which is typically then repaid by guess who? The property owners. Fascinating, huh? In these districts, right? General obligation bonds allow the city to restore, replace, and expand infrastructure. So it's like the double-edged sword, right? Because we take this undeveloped land, we have to provide and create this infrastructure to develop this area, which will be a great thing for the community, right? But in theory, right, in order to do that, the people that move into that community will then slowly pay it back with their taxes. So it's an opinionated topic, okay? What you need to know. Property owners within a metro district are typically subject to additional taxes or fees, okay? And it's important to know that property owners should be aware of this. So if you're showing homes in a new development somewhere like that, new area, might not hurt just to see if there's a metro district involved. Just again, that's bonus points for you as a real estate professional to share with them, hey, taxes will be higher. Usually not a huge factor, but something good to know about. You don't want it to come back and bite you. Anyone ever have this happen? Yeah? No. No. Me. Me. Got it. Okay. Okay. Cool. Good on metro districts? All right. Okay.
Do they,
Yeah.
districts ever get paid off?
It's a good question. I usually get that. So that's a great question, right? And there's a lot of controversy around that topic because typically they're set, again, I'm going to make this up. It's subjective, 20, 25 year, 30 year, right? That long time to pay it back, but sometimes that can get pushed out and revoted on, expand. So truthfully, you don't know. Yeah.
So who has more of the power in that situation?
The board of directors. Yeah, the board of directors. Yeah, you should Google it. Like to Google or ChatGPT, right? Metro districts controversy, Colorado. There's like crazy stories of like homeowners trying to like take over the board of directors and like not pay, and yeah, it's very controversial. Yeah, so they're very good, right? And you know, there's two sides of the coin, right? I understand both sides. Okay, good question, Gary. Property taxes are paid in arrears. What does that mean? The 2025 property value that is coming out now in May, right, is going to result in paying taxes on that value in 2026, right? The taxes that we're paying right now, 2024 paid in 2025. Tax bills, okay, reflect the taxes due for the preceding year, right? After they're mailed out in January 1st, because that's when the mill levy is typically set, is at the beginning of the year. Property taxes, two ways to pay them here in Colorado. You can either make one payment on April 30th, or you can do two payments. First payment is last day of February, and second payment is June 15th. Okay, you choose. Property tax relief. Okay, senior citizens, qualifying disabled veterans, the surviving spouses of Gold Star veterans and members of the National Guard and Reserves who are called into active military service may be eligible for the following tax relief programs: property tax, rent, heat debate, bless you, property tax deferral, property tax work-off program, senior citizen property tax exemption, disabled veteran property tax exemption. Okay,
With the senior citizen, isn't there some sort of amount of years they have to
There
live?
is.
No.
there
You have to
is.
live there.
There
If
is.
someone were 65.
Right.
Don't you have to live in the house for 10 years?
Truthfully, I don't know.
Okay. But do you try to start at 65 or
10 years? Okay.
prior does it matter? Yeah.
10 years. If you want to learn more, I've got that link. I'll give you guys the slide deck after, or just Google property tax exemption.
Almost like a homesteading.
Yeah.
thing.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Do you know someone who has it?
Yeah. We built a house and moved in, and then I looked into it, and they said, yeah, your husband might be 65, but you gotta live there for 10 years, which is really BS.
I agree.
Because, you can't move, you have to stay where you are if
Yeah.
you're of a certain age to take advantage of that.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like living in the area.
All right, moving on. Why we're all here? Appealing your real estate. Here we go. Let's appeal your property value. Okay, so property values come out in May. For the longest time, the deadline to file appeal was, what was it? Early June, June 1st. Counties have changed that since just the influx of appeals as of the last reassessment. Certain counties have changed the time frame, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But what happens is property owners can request an appeal at the first level with the county assessor. You can do this online in most counties. You can submit it via mail, right? If you receive a denial back and you are still in disagreement, you can then file to the Board of Equalization, also called the Board of County Commissioners, depending on what you want to call it, which is kind of the second level, all right? Beyond that, you can have a hearing, Board of Equalization hearing, also Board of County Commissioners hearing. A lot of these were done over Zoom because it was absolutely wild. If you still disagree and you want to go all the way to the end to technically the third level, you can then go to, typically what we do is called the Colorado Board of Assessment Appeals. Very rarely does a property tax owner go to that third level, but usually we do advance the first two appeal levels. So what that means for you is if you believe that you have a legitimate appeal, you file it at the first level and it gets denied, I highly recommend that you push it to the second level and schedule an official formal hearing to get heard out on that appeal. Okay, because it depends. Again, this comes back to people. This comes back to the county. Some people will just rubber stamp it. They might just be too busy, right? They might think you'll go away. You won't appeal to the next level. Appeal to the next level if you believe you have an appeal opportunity. Okay, then that also gives them more time to look at it, right? They might, I've seen this happen too, they might finally look at it, give you a call or shoot you a message and say that they will lower it before the hearing. I've seen that happen. So definitely advance to the second level if you get denied at the first level. Cool? Cool. Okay, important dates. We hit that on values, May 1st, June 1st. Deadline for taxpayers to protest, but that date has shifted as of last appeal method. So some counties pushed it out a week. I'm curious to see what happens now. But good thing, all you really need to know, a good deadline for you is early June. Get it done, okay? Get it filed in there, right? Which really just gives you about a month-ish to get it done. And worst case scenario, if you don't get it done in time and you miss it, we're going to talk about that in a second. There's still an opportunity for you to file an appeal. You just have to wait a little bit of time, okay? Then again, right, these dates, right, you're going to get a response, right? Then if you get denied, you go to the next level and so on and so forth, and you get that, right? And that's how the process works. Let's look at an actual property appeal walkthrough. Okay, so here I am in Denver County. Again, like this is a huge value to you all on how you can help the everyday homeowner and help your clients, help your neighborhood that you're farming, Gary, and do all this great, awesome help to help them. Because when they go onto these county websites, whether it's El Paso, Denver, Arapahoe, whatever, they're all different. And some are more helpful and more visually appealing than others. Most of them are not visually appealing. I'll take that back. And what that means for you is if I load data and I look at my neighborhood sales that the county provides me, I don't have any pictures. I don't really have that much information to go off of. Like, it's hard for me to like justify an appeal and compare, right? I can't see, does this home look like my home? Like, this is different than mine. So again, that's where you have access to more advanced data that you can leverage to help other people and use the MLS. So I'll send you this if you want it. This is what I used to use to, back in the day when I lived inside my cubicle, my Excel spreadsheet to make these appeals. But basically what we usually do is we just give the information of the property, right? We give why it's valued and really just explain why are we filing appeal, right? What we believe that value is and why. And we're gonna state that within our appeal case, okay? So this is how we used to file appeals. We did thousands of properties. We would say, this is who we are, this is the property, this is the information, this is what we believe the value is. And then we get into why do we think it should be reduced, okay? I want to talk to you about a very important thing now with some properties, okay? Now, let's talk about, you have a property and it's sold within this time frame, January 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2024. If the actual subject property is sold within this time frame, that is the strongest indicator of value, according to the county. Okay, right? Fair enough. It's the actual property. Okay. Now, here's what will happen. This is important because we'll get this a lot. You'll get this from homeowners. They'll say, hey, Rebecca, my property sold in that date of value that I looked up and they told me about online. It sold in January. And, we bought it for $600,000. Okay. But it's assessed at whatever, $650, right? Well, Rebecca, because she took this class, she knows that they probably time trended that value forward from January 1st up until June 30th. Okay. So that's why the value could be higher than the actual purchase price. Okay. In circumstances, though, we've also had where it's sold and somehow they missed it. I don't know how. And it's assessed way higher than what it should be at. So the county makes mistakes. So the first thing to look at is, did this thing sell within that time frame, right? And then how close is it assessed to that number? All right. Great situation. It's literally assessed at the property price that it was purchased at in that number. Really unique circumstance. This is where you kind of get into the weeds, but it's pretty cool. This is actually my in-laws' property that I helped appeal many years ago. And look at this. Guess what? They purchased this property for $1.275 million on July 15th of 2020. At that time, compared to now, that would be like saying they purchased it on July 15th, 2024, just past the date of value. The other question you're going to get hit with is, hey, I bought my property in July, like it's right there. Like, can we count it? Technically, no. Technically, the county assessor has to put blinders on and they can't look past June 30th of 2024. But here's the exception. If somehow you have some sort of documentation or something that indicates that a price was agreed upon in before June 30th of 2024, even though it closed in July, you can use that as evidence and file that appeal and get it reduced, which is what we did for my in-laws. So we got them reduced. There was a contract signed in place in June. They counted it and they dropped it down. Okay. So what does that look like? Result, property value was at was reduced to 1.275. That total value reduction was $183,400 value reduction. Now here's the important part. This we need to look at too. Like if you're on the fence, do I file an appeal? Does it make sense? You got to remember that if you reduce this value down for 2025, it's also going to be reduced down for 2026. So you're technically saving 2 years of property taxes, right? So that value reduction equated to over $2,000 in tax savings, okay? Right? Which is amazing. Again, I'd love to save $2,000. And I'm their favorite son-in-law. Okay. I don't know if this still works. Can someone scan this and see if it works? Let's see. Yeah, does it work? Is it there? Yeah. Oh, cool. It still works. That's my spreadsheet. If you want to use it, download it, take it. Cool. If you want something to work off of or, do your own thing. I'll send you guys this slide deck too. That way you have this within the slide deck. So you also can, of course, use it later on, not on your phones, right? Yeah. Bree's not even going to scan it. You sat there last time I taught. That's your seat right there. You're right. I know. Sharing is caring. Okay. So look at that. We got 3 minutes left. Did you miss the appeal deadline? So back to that question, right? Property owner says, hey, whatever, it's June 15th and the county, deadline was June 1st. Shoot, what do I do? That person can still file an appeal. They just have to wait. Okay, they can file what's known as a retroactive appeal. It's called an abatement in the state of Colorado. They just have to wait to submit that appeal until January 1st of 2026. Okay, so you will wait until the next year, and then you can file what's called an abatement. It's the same process, file the appeal, get it done, right, and then get it reduced. And if worst case scenario, that appeal is still taking place after their taxes are due, they will receive a refund plus interest on their taxes based off of that reduction. Gary.
January, so the January 1st, is there like a 30-day window or?
For the abatement?
Yeah.
No, technically they can file after January 1st, and then they have until 2 years to file that abatement. Okay, so let's cover that here in a second. Deadline to petition an abatement is the first working day of January within 2 years of the date the taxes were levied. Okay, right? So they have 2 years. So if it's 2025, right, they could officially file that abatement in 2026, and they have up till 2 years to file that abatement to get the 2020 value reduced. Got it? That makes sense? Kind of.
So from the last cycle that has expired.
Yeah, so let's say 2023 value, you would have filed an abatement in January 1st after 2024 up until 2026.
Then somebody could actually file a late or an abatement today in 2025.
Correct. You can go back up to 2 years as long as you were the owner of the property.
Right.
Someone can't buy the property and then say, hey, they didn't appeal it and go back in time. County doesn't like that.
Okay.
But good thinking. Good thinking. Just don't wait that long.
I know.
Gary won't. Any other questions on this? Cool. That's it, guys. If you want to get a jump start and download this slide deck, I'll leave this QR code up. It's going to take you to a landing page. Truthfully, it's going to send you an email. You'll get an email with actually a list of all of my classes that I teach with every single slide deck. Go crazy, download this one. It'll be in there. You should receive it within a few minutes. If you guys have any questions on this, I understand it's a lot to wrap your head around. We're probably going to have questions, probably not now, but maybe in a month or so from now. Reach out to me. I'd be happy to help answer them. I hope that was helpful for you.